I think one of the worst things we can ask children when they're growing up is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the reason for this is we then start attaching ourselves to an identity of a thing. So, and then that thing is also limited to what we know. So, if all you know is what we call the kindergarten profession, so teacher, lawyer, doctor, engineer, then that's all you aspire to be. And if as you're going through education, you don't necessarily fit into the confines of education or the confines of these specific identities, then you force yourself into it. And there's so many examples of people who have broken the mold and have done wonderful. Obviously, they're also very successful people, but for example, someone like Richard Branson, he says like during school, he always struggled in school. And I think he didn't even bother going to, I don't think he finished high school. Please don't fact check me on this. This is not libel. Branson. Uh, but in his book, The Virgin Way, I believe, obviously, he did say he struggled with education. Later on, he realized it was ADHD, and as he started doing stuff and being an entrepreneur, he realized what was open to him. And I say all this to say is, as the world is changing so quickly, the question becomes, how do we break away from the identities that we attached ourselves to when we were growing up? When one, we did not know ourselves well enough, because when you're 5 years old and you say you want to be a doctor, you know? Two, now that we know more, how do we then pursue those pathways? And then three, it's just also just kind of like the world is such a different place than when we were growing up. So how do we adapt to this economy? And how do we make sure that we're making decisions that allow us to always have food on the table, and not only have food on the table, but to thrive, to excel, to do something that we really enjoy. So in this video, I want to talk about that. I'll go through a few reasons, and um I'm not alone in this. So Michelle Obama, in her memoir Becoming, the former first lady tackles this head on in the very first chapter. She views the question as a way of putting children into a box before they've had a chance to explore the world. Adam Grant, he does organizational psychology. He talks about that asking kids to pick a single career path can actually hinder their development. He suggests that it encourages identity foreclosure, settling on an image of the future before exploring all the options. Chimamanda Adichie. While she speaks broadly about the single story, Adichie has touched on the pressure placed on children to conform to specific prestigious professional titles rather than cultivating their actual interest. She advocates for allowing children the room to be rather than the high pressure to become. And quote these folks just to ground us a little. I guess I didn't quote them, but I reference these folks just to ground us in the conversation I'm having, but also to move us forward and say, how does this become real life? So for me, when I was growing up, when the question came to me, I don't think I was originally asked what I wanted to be. Either I was asked what I wanted to do or something else. But pretty much my first answers when I was very young was, I want to be someone who travels and gets paid to travel and help people. So because of that, I wanted to be a CIA agent. I wanted to be an FBI agent. Why? Because in my brain, I was just like, well, if you're a CIA agent, if you're an FBI agent, this means that you get to help people, you get to travel, you get to catch the bad guys. Fast forward, my politics have changed. Well, I don't even know if my politics have changed, but I would not be a CIA FBI agent, but I still love to help people, love to travel. But also at a very young age, I think I was in third grade when I went to the Scholastic Fair and realized that actually, I think I bought a book, or my friend bought a book about being an FBI agent, being a Scholastic, whatever. And then I was like, oh, this is not for me. So I ended up not doing that. So very fine. But I digress. Very early realized that's not the path I wanted to go to. And then, like most kids, when the question kept being asked to me, I finally wanted to be, palatable to the adults. So I said I wanted to be a lawyer. And that's kind of what stuck from maybe fifth grade all the way to maybe my freshman or sophomore year of college. At that point, my professor, we were doing something and we were like reading a book and we had to write an essay. And she said, I think you would really thrive in the School of Education. And I was just like, my mom's a teacher. My grandmother, not only is a teacher, she owns a whole school. She's the founder for school. I'm good on that. Which, at some of the point, let's talk about how some things are in our genes. And like, yes, you can obviously say, um, you're seeing things, right? And therefore you're emulating it. But I also kind of want to feel like it's in our genes because my great grandmother was also a teacher. And now my job, even though my job's title is not teacher, I teach people change management. How do you adjust in a crazy environment? I teach people how to use AI. I teach people how to use technology. I teach people how to get jobs. I'm a teacher, you know? But anyway, so many tangents. Back to what we came here for. Why should we not ask kids this and how do we liberate ourselves now? So, as I mentioned, at some point, decided no longer wanted to be a lawyer. I did listen to my professor and move over to the School of Education, but then my major was human development and applied psychology. And this was rooted in I want to help people. Did I know exactly how the travel would come in? No, but hey, I enjoyed what I was doing. Enjoyed it so much that I ended up doing a 5 year program. And in that 5 year program, I got my MSW. So in 5 years, I got my bachelor's degree and my master's degree. Again, how was I going to help people and travel the way I said I wanted to? I did not know. But that's what started my pivot journey. So I went and I did school social work. I worked in higher ed. I worked in nonprofits as an administrator. Then I pivoted to government and I worked in the local government. I worked in the New York City Department of Education, where I was helping people in a division called post secondary education. So that was a division that helped people decide what they wanted to do when they graduated. So I was responsible for looking at CTE programs which pretty much said, okay, these are all the different pathways you can take that do not require 4 year degree once you graduate high school. Let's make sure that we're actually giving you the curriculum, the education you need to succeed. But then also in that same, post-secondary, it was also, okay, well, if you did want to go to college, how do we set you up for success? How do we make sure um, you're familiar with college classes early, things of that nature? So all of that was exploring the possibility of work. And this is important because I didn't call it that then, but pretty much where I stand now in this is careers and work, they're all imaginary. And that's why I push back at this whole idea of asking children very early, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because if it's all imaginary, if the idea of work in the terms of what we do now, you sit behind a computer or you do these things and you exchange labor. Because when we first started these things, we didn't, live in these houses, live in these spaces, go to work and do all this stuff. We helped each other to succeed. And then at some point, someone said, you know what? Let's put a price tag and let's put a prestige on these things. And then now we've imagined what a good job is. We've imagined what a career path should be. We've imagined the degrees you need in order to achieve XYZ. So if we imagined all of this, how do we imagine differently? And we imagine it differently by starting with a different question. So for me, because my initial answer has always been and centered around, oh, I want to help people and travel, as I've moved through my career and as I figured out different careers that were possible, I finally, or not finally, I eventually left the government and then I moved over to tech. And 2 or 3 tech switches later, I went from being in ed tech and now I'm in SaaS. I'm helping people and traveling for work. So I'm helping people through helping them adapt and adopt so they can, still be in the world of work and still thrive in the world of work without losing their mind, without burning out, without having a crisis. I support people. One of the major things that I see with my clients that I work with one on one is figuring out their through line of work. So even if you want to leave your current job or you're burnt out, you were laid off and you're looking for your next opportunity, what is your through line? What is the value that you bring to the table? And how do we make sure that we communicate that so the next person who hires you or the next opportunity you grab is within your wheelhouse and you're relatively happy in that? So that's the way I'm helping people. And traveling, literally, after this, I'm gonna go pack because I'm going to Singapore, then Sydney, then Orlando, Florida, back to back for clients. And that's my life. And I was able to do this because my mode of operation has always been what do I want to do? How do I want to live my life? And then by realizing that the way I want to live my life is through this flexibility, the fact that I get to live in Ghana in the winters because America's too cold, and then come to the US in the summertime, all that flexibility It's what I imagined and what I wanted. So I imagined my life and then I built a job around that. I did not put my identity, because my identity is freedom. My identity is not corporate worker climbing up a corporate ladder. That's not my identity. That was never my identity. I did not dream, wish, whatever to do that. So once we're able to move away from this question of who do you want to be when you grow up, and I just want to go back to Adam Grant's phrasing of this idea of identity foreclosure. Once we allow ourselves to foreclose and let go of that idea of this is my identity, then you're able to move ahead. You're able to then say, okay, cool. What is a life I want? What is my actual identity outside of how I make money? And you're able to be free. So I just want to close with this. The consensus among myself and all these wonderful thinkers I mentioned earlier, Michelle Obama, Adam Grant, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, is that the world is changing too fast for a single answer. Many of the jobs today's children will hold don't even exist yet. Many of the jobs that we would want to take, right, do not exist yet. Just think about AI. Literally 2, 3 years ago, a number of the jobs that are now available through AI were not available. A number of jobs that we thought would still be available are no longer available, right? So we cannot anchor ourselves in this very static way of thinking and identity. We have to be dynamic. So by asking what we want to be, we accidentally teach ourselves and we teach everyone coming behind us that if we don't have a specific title in mind, that we're somehow behind. And that's not cool. So some questions I want to offer you are, what are you curious about right now? What problems do you want to solve? What things do you enjoy learning most? And especially if you're someone who's been in your career for a while, what have you enjoyed? What are you really good at and then you want to keep doing? And the most important question, especially if you are a full-fledged adult, even if you don't want to admit it, is what life do you want? Do you want to be able to live someplace else, half the time? Do you want to be able to travel for work? Or do you want to log in, around 12 for work because you want to make sure that you have set some time up so you can whether have your own self-care in the morning, whether you're taking your children to school, whatever it is that you've imagined for your life. Is your career is the thing that's making you money allowing that? If the answer is no, let's talk. Let's have a conversation. Let's break away from these questions that were asked before, ask ourselves new questions, and then build a life on the new answers. All right, I'm here tomorrow. I'll see you then. Bye.